My husband of 34 years died on a Tuesday. By Thursday, his mistress was already calling his lawyer. She had been sleeping with my husband for 20 years, and she thought that gave her rights. She thought I was just a grieving widow who would sign whatever papers were put in front of her. She thought wrong, because 3 days after the funeral, I opened my late husband's safety deposit box, and what I found inside did not just break my heart. It gave me everything I needed to destroy her completely. Welcome to Grandma Payback Stories. My name is Grandma, and I want you to take a breath before I start, because this one is going to take you through the full range of emotions. You will feel the grief, the shock, the rage, and then, I promise you, the most satisfying justice you have ever heard of. Before we get into this story, please hit that subscribe button right now and ring that notification bell. I share stories like this every single day, and your support keeps this channel going. Alright, let us talk about Margaret, her dead husband Gerald, his mistress Diana, and the safety deposit box that changed everything. Margaret was 62 years old when Gerald had his heart attack. They had been married for 34 years. 2 grown children, a house they had paid off together, a life that looked, from the outside, like everything a marriage should be. Margaret had worked as a nurse for 30 years before retiring. Gerald had run a successful accounting firm. They were comfortable. They were settled. They were supposed to grow old together. Gerald died on a Tuesday morning in March, sitting at his kitchen table drinking coffee. Just gone, no warning. Margaret was in the next room and heard the cup hit the floor. She performed CPR until the paramedics arrived. They could not save him. Gerald was 59 years old, and he was gone in an instant. Margaret was devastated. She moved through the first days in a fog. The funeral arrangements, the phone calls, the casseroles from neighbors, the endless paperwork. She was barely sleeping, barely eating. Her children flew in and stayed with her. She was just trying to survive the grief. And then, on Thursday, 2 days after the funeral, her phone rang. The woman on the other end introduced herself as Diana. She said she had been Gerald's partner, not business partner, life partner. She said she had been with Gerald for 20 years, that he had promised her things, that she had rights, and that Margaret needed to understand that before the estate was settled. Margaret stood in her kitchen, holding the phone, and felt the floor shift under her feet. 20 years. Diana had been with Gerald for 20 years. That meant this affair started when their youngest child was 8 years old. It meant every anniversary, every Christmas, every vacation, every quiet Sunday morning had been a lie. Gerald had looked Margaret in the eyes for 2 decades and loved her and lied to her simultaneously. Margaret did not scream. She did not cry. She asked Diana, very calmly, what exactly she believed she was entitled to. Diana explained, with shocking confidence, that Gerald had promised her a portion of his estate, that he had told her he would take care of her, that she had documents proving their relationship and his intentions. She expected Margaret to cooperate, or things would get messy. Margaret hung up the phone, and then she sat down, very quietly, and thought about the safety deposit box. Gerald had kept a safety deposit box at their bank for their entire marriage. He handled all the finances, and the box was where he kept important documents, insurance policies, property deeds, their wills. Margaret had never had reason to open it herself because Gerald always handled everything. But Gerald was gone now, and the box was in both their names. And Margaret realized she had never actually looked inside it herself. She drove to the bank the next morning. The box was long and flat, and when the bank employee left her alone with it, Margaret lifted the lid with trembling hands. She was expecting insurance papers. What she found instead was 20 years of evidence. There were documents in Gerald's handwriting, letters to Diana, photographs of them together spanning years. There were financial records showing transfers from a joint account Margaret had not known existed. There were receipts for gifts, vacations, jewelry. There was a lease agreement, in Gerald's name, on an apartment Margaret had never known about. And there was a handwritten letter, the most recent one, dated just 3 months before Gerald died, in which he told Diana that he was going to tell Margaret the truth and that he wanted to be with Diana openly. He was going to leave her. He had been planning to leave her, and then he died before he could. Margaret sat in that small bank room for a very long time, and then she picked up her phone and called her daughter, who was a paralegal. Her daughter came immediately. She looked through everything in the box with trained eyes, and what she saw made her face go very still. She told Margaret to put everything back, close the box, and go home. She needed to make some calls first. Within 48 hours, Margaret had a lawyer. Not just any lawyer, a forensic financial attorney who specialized in hidden assets and estate fraud. Margaret handed over everything she had found in the box, and the attorney started digging. What they found over the next 2 weeks was staggering. Gerald had been systematically moving money for years, small amounts at first, then larger ones. He had opened accounts in his name alone, used a post office box Diana did not know about to hide the statements, and funneled close to $200,000 out of there. Marital assets over a decade. Some of it went to the apartment, some went to vacations. Some went to Diana directly, deposited into her personal account. But here is where Diana made her fatal mistake. While Margaret's attorneys were uncovering all of this, Diana had filed a legal claim against the estate. She submitted documents to the probate court claiming Gerald had promised her a portion of his assets and demanding a formal accounting. The documents she submitted included what she claimed was a signed letter from Gerald, written 6 months before his death, stating his intentions to provide for her. Margaret's attorney looked at that letter very carefully, and then she brought in a handwriting expert, and the handwriting expert determined, without a shadow of a doubt, that the letter was forged. The signature did not match Gerald's signature on any of the authentic documents from the safety deposit box. Diana had not just claimed a relationship, she had fabricated a legal document and submitted it to probate court. That is not a civil dispute. That is fraud. Margaret's attorney contacted the district attorney's office. They were very interested. Diana had committed fraud upon the court, forgery, and potentially perjury. The investigation began immediately. Diana had no idea any of this was happening. She was still calling Margaret's attorney's office, demanding updates on the estate settlement, acting as though she had every right in the world. She had been so confident for so long that Gerald would protect her, that no one would question her, that the grieving widow would simply fold under pressure. She had badly misjudged Margaret. When the investigators started pulling Diana's financial records, they found something else. The transfers from Gerald's hidden account to Diana's account had continued, right up until the week before he died. $200,000 over 10 years, yes, but Diana had also been filing her taxes as single with no additional income, despite receiving tens of thousands of dollars in deposits that should have been reported. The IRS became involved. Tax evasion on top of fraud. It took for months from the day Margaret opened that safety deposit box to the day Diana was arrested. She was charged with fraud upon the court, forgery of a legal document, and tax evasion. She was arrested at her home, which turned out to be the apartment Gerald had been paying for, the apartment that was in Gerald's name, which now belonged to his estate, which meant it belonged to Margaret. Diana was evicted within 30 days of her arrest. The trial lasted 6 days. Diana's attorney tried to argue that she genuinely believed the letter was authentic, that perhaps Gerald had written it and she had not known it was problematic. The handwriting expert dismantled that argument completely. The forgery was deliberate and skillful, which meant Diana had either forged it herself or paid someone to do it. Either way, she was responsible. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. Guilty on all counts. Diana was sentenced to 4 years in federal prison for the fraud and forgery charges. The tax evasion added 18 months. She was ordered to pay full restitution for the unpaid taxes, plus penalties. Everything she owned was subject to seizure to cover the restitution. She lost her car, her savings, her jewelry, including pieces Gerald had given her that Margaret's attorney argued were purchased with marital funds. Diana walked into that courtroom thinking she was owed something. She walked out in handcuffs with nothing. Margaret stood outside the courthouse on the day of sentencing, with her 2 children beside her. She did not celebrate. She did not cheer. She simply stood very still and breathed the afternoon air for a long moment. Her daughter asked her how she felt. Margaret thought about it carefully before answering. She said she felt something like peace, not happiness, because none of this could undo what Gerald had done. He had lied to her for 20 years, and she would carry that grief for the rest of her life. The man she thought she knew had been living a double life, and no courtroom verdict could repair the damage that truth had done. She had loved him genuinely, completely for 34 years, and he had taken that love and used it as cover. But she also felt something else. She felt clear, because Diana had come at her with arrogance and entitlement and a forged document, expecting a broken old woman to crumble. And Margaret had not crumbled. Margaret had opened a box, found the truth, and followed it all the way to justice. She had done it quietly, methodically, without a single dramatic confrontation. No screaming phone calls, no public scenes. Just evidence, lawyers, and patience. The estate was settled 8 months after Gerald's death. Margaret received everything: the house, the legitimate retirement accounts, Gerald's life insurance policy, and after the hidden accounts were recovered by the courts, even a portion of the money Gerald had transferred out over the years was returned as part of the fraud restitution. Margaret used some of that money to take her grandchildren on a trip she had always wanted to take. She did not think about Gerald or Diana the entire time. She watched her grandchildren run on the beach and felt grateful to be alive and free and finally, in possession of the full truth. She told her daughter later that the safety deposit box was the greatest gift Gerald ever accidentally gave her, because it meant she never had to wonder. She knew exactly who he was, exactly what Diana was, and exactly what she was worth. And what she was worth turned out to be everything. Diana is currently serving her sentence. The apartment is rented to a young family now, and Margaret drinks her morning coffee in a house that is entirely, completely, undeniably hers. If this story hit you somewhere deep, smash that like button and subscribe to Grandma Payback Stories. Every single week I bring you true stories of betrayal met with justice, of women who were underestimated and rose anyway, of karma doing exactly what it was always meant to do. Drop a comment below and tell me what you thought of Margaret. Tell me about the safety deposit box. Tell me if you believe justice was served. Grandma reads every single one, and today I need to hear from you.